Hey everyone, I'm Cappy and welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their communities. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. Today's episode, we sit down with a chef who's made a name for himself by infusing methods and ingredients from all over the world that he balances together with his Haitian heritage. Gregory Gourdet's cooking has earned him countless accolades, and when you hear his path to success, you'll be booking a ticket to Portland to eat at Kann real soon. Let's go Beyond the Plate. So for our audio tests, we like to have our guests name 5 of something. For example, for Daniel Hum, we had him name 5 of his favorite farmer's market ingredients at the moment in time. So for you, let's name 5 ingredients we typically see in the pantry of a Haitian home.
Oh, that's easy. Definitely Scotch bonnet chilies. Definitely pickles. Like a jar of pickles is always on the counter. And it's definitely used as an ingredient, even though it's also can be categorized as a dish or a condiment. There is always plantains around, both green and ripe, yellow ones. There's always vanilla extract. And there's a lot of artificial vanilla extract that's popular, but I use the real stuff. And one last thing, I would definitely say limes. Limes, lots of marinating proteins and seafoods, and a really killer limeade as well.
Love it. You sound good. Let's do it. Today's guest is an award-winning chef, writer, restaurateur, best-selling author, and television personality. He is known for his award-winning cuisine and for being a 2-time finalist on Top Chef. As the chef and founder of Kann and Sous-Sol in Portland, he's won several James Beard Awards. In 2022 for his book, Everyone's Table, Global Recipes for Modern Health. Then in 2023 for Best New Restaurant. And in 2024 for Best Chef, Northwest and Pacific Region. Not quite sure which James Beard Foundation awards are left, but I suppose we can see in 2025. Please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with Chef Gregory Gourdet. Thank you for joining us, Chef.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Kathy.
Yeah, so I guess we could just get some more of the award talk out of the way because there's definitely plenty more. And just to rattle some off, Chef of the Year by both Eater Portland and the Oregon Department of Agriculture, recognized by Eater, the New York Times, and Robb Report as Best New Restaurant. Esquire named Kann #1 Best New Restaurant in America. Sous-Sol was named one of Esquire's best bars in America, and on and on and on. What goes through your mind as you hear of all these?
For me, it really just is about accomplishment mindset and just setting goals. And for me, when I think about these awards, and if we collectively as a team discuss wanting to win all these awards, it truly is about doing the work. However, because I really don't feel you can cheat your way to the top. And I feel some people think that you can, but for us, it's really about achieving a standard and then working every day to uphold that standard. At the end of the day, you have to have really great food. You have to have great service. You have to have an important story, but you also have to have a great team that's happy. And for us, team care really is as important as guest care. And when we think about these awards and accolades, we're really thinking holistically about the entire situation. Are we taking care of our team to make sure they're happy and healthy, and it's the right job for them, and it's the right company for them, and it's the right restaurant for them, so that we can all be on the same page and aligned and create beautiful, life-changing experiences for our guests. So I'm definitely a competitive person, but really it's more competitive with myself than comparing myself to other people. I've always said that you should never compare yourself to others. I do not compare myself to other people. I just try to stay in my own lane and lead my team in that lane. And every time we look over at our James Beard Award for Best New Restaurant, it's a gentle reminder of a standard that we need to uphold ourselves to. That's all it is.
Do you feel pressure at all, or do you kind of just have fun with them?
With what, the awards? Or?
Yeah, do you feel pressure to live up to the title?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of expectation, because as someone on the inside, I know that if I see a certain list with these are the top 20 best new restaurants, or these are the top whatever listicle, I know that if I go to one of those places and have a bad experience, I'm not going to be surprised. But because I know people can have bad days, different writers have different opinions about things, and maybe their palate isn't my palate. But, if the regular average diner sees a listicle and they have a bad experience somewhere, they're going to be like, why is this placed on a list? Why did it win this award? It makes no sense. So you have to take it seriously because people come in with very high expectations, you know, and like the last thing you want people to say is they don't deserve any of those accolades.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a very true, interesting point of view. I've been following you and the restaurant for quite some time. We've never met like in person, but like personally, I love that because I've met a fair amount of people that have come on the podcast. So I'm excited to talk to you, not only because you have a great story, but also every time your name comes up in conversation, and it just came up like a week ago with another chef, everyone's like, he's the nicest guy ever. Why do you think others in our industry say you're so nice? Are you really that nice?
I mean, I try to be a nice guy. I'm not an asshole.
Good. Okay.
I don't know. I think it was definitely my upbringing. I like growing up the child of immigrants, and I feel as immigrants, you have to assimilate into American culture, or, you know, my parents just felt they had to look and act a certain professional way to get ahead, you know, and it allowed them to have good jobs and have a wide range of people in their friends and colleague circle, people from all different ethnicities and backgrounds, even though we grew up in a very family-focused Haitian American family unit that was pretty expansive. And then where we grew up was like very predominantly like Black American and Caribbean American. So through that, you know, like they've always just wanted us to like be really educated and have like all the resources that they could provide for us. And it came down to a point of like wanting us to like, I used to always get in trouble for like having a crazy haircut or for having piercings and like having crazy clothes, which I guess I still do. But, you know, I think them instilling in me this method of just wanting to be comfortable in lots of different spaces, I think I have just turned into someone who really likes to just bring people in. And I think a lot of it has to do specifically in the kitchen with what type of kitchen you came up in. And I worked for Jean-Georges, and I feel when we think about some of the stories that we've heard in fine dining kitchens, you know, like I feel extremely lucky that I was able to work in the late 90s, early 2000s in like a world-class fine dining kitchen with a chef who was really establishing himself in New York and around the world, to be there for that time of his career growth and all the groundbreaking things he was doing, and to be in a kitchen that wasn't toxic. And I worked in a kitchen where they didn't throw pans at you. And if you cut yourself, you were encouraged to go to the hospital, which I did on my first day on the line. Yeah, I sliced my hand open, like 6 stitches, and I didn't come back for 2 more days, but I was supported. You know, so like it's like little examples like that where I know some other of my good friends who came up, they'd be like, "Chef, I cut myself," and the chef was like, "Okay, you can go to the hospital afterwards." It's like little things like that. So I didn't grow up in that kitchen, and I thank Jean-Georges for that. So I always had a very nurturing culinary upbringing, and I think I have such a close relationship with my mentor. He was at Jean-Georges. His name is Greg Gourdet. When I was an extern from CIA at Jean-Georges, he was a line cook. When I came back as a line cook, he was a sous chef, and so on and so forth. We followed each other's careers, and he's still my mentor. I talk to him weekly. And I think that relationship is really important. And I try to have that relationship with my team. So, I mean, I think that, like, the last piece of it is when you look around and you realize you literally have everything that you need and you have everything that you want. And like I spoke about, like, not comparing myself to others. And like, if I see someone with something else, and like, there are tons of colleagues that have like way more than I do, make way more money, have more opportunities, have more vacation time. But like, if I want that, I know I can just work for that. Like, I have that mindset. So like, I know that by having that mindset, it does generally make you a nicer person because you're not trying to like fight other people for things, you know? You're actually trying to give other people things, you know?
Ooh, I like that. That's awesome. Let's take a few steps back to Queens. Let's start there. In every like picture I see of you, you have this like great big smile on you. Was little Gregory like the happiest kid or what?
I mean, yeah. Honestly, I was just thinking about this recently and super grateful that I don't have a lot of family trauma. And like, I just have to be, because my parents just moved and they're older and they're like in their early 80s and they just moved to Atlanta to be closer to my sister. They've been retired for almost 20 years. But I was just thinking how grateful I am that I came from such a loving household, even though, you know, we didn't have a lot. But my parents always made the most of it, and family was really important. So yeah, I was just kind of like a quiet, nerdy kid, which I kind of still am. I read a lot, which is probably why I enjoy writing cookbooks. I always had a good circle of friends that I always thought was important, and I think the same now. But yeah, but life was super simple growing up. Just really supportive parents who just wanted the best for me. I chose to derail all that on my own.
Oh, this is going to be fun. And it was, I take it, like a traditional Haitian household?
Very much much so. My parents were somewhat of a trailblazer in our family because a lot of our relatives did immigrate to the States after us. So my sister and I are first generation in my family, born in the States, but we had tons of cousins and really tons of cousins, like tons of cousins who moved to New York. Maybe they would stay with us for a few weeks while, their parent got an apartment big enough to host them, like little situations like that. They come and they go to high school with us in Queens, and then they move on to college, etc. So that sense of family was really, really, really strong.
What do you love most about the Haitian culture?
For me, I just love the cultural history of it all because I can say, oh yeah, I grew up Haitian. The food is really good. The candy's really delicious. The spices are wonderful, like all these things. I went to school in Haiti for a year when I was a kid. And, I have like a beautiful Haitian family and that is all great. There's a general sense of humor to a lot of Haitian culture, which you have to be Haitian to kind of get it, which is really cool. But as I kind of dove into kind of more historical things and like just as I started cooking Haitian food, because I did start cooking Haitian later in life, going back to family recipes, but more doing my historical research for development of kann, I think that became the most fascinating thing to me. And Haiti's place in the world and Christopher Columbus going to Hispaniola as the first place in the Caribbean he stopped. And, the indigenous Tejanos cooking over fire and being the originators of barbecue, and just, like how we have been able to provide so many amazing crops for the world for centuries, from cane and rum, chocolate, coffee, all these ingredients that help make Europe and France rich. All of these things came from Haiti. So, I think we can probably start with a visual of Haiti. Maybe it's, natural disaster. Maybe that's like the first thing we think about when we think back to Haiti, but that's a modern public view, kind of where the storytelling has come from. And I mean, at this point, we're still in 2024 and that public perception has been derailed recently by, certain politicians. But for me, it really is about the resilience, the enslaved, and how these ingredients came over from West Africa, how we freed ourselves, the first free black republic, and how that's like extremely powerful story, basically stating fact that, the Haitian people really inspired the end of slavery around the world. And then even our migration to Louisiana and that relationship with Creole. And I think it's all just very cool and very interesting. And I'm still learning about other countries that speak Creole and they're very similar to Haitian Creole, and I'm still learning. So it's all just very fascinating. There's just such a rich cultural history that has impacted so much of the world. And I don't think we talk about that enough at all. And that's one of our biggest missions at kann.
Who cooked it? Mom or dad cook at home growing up?
It was definitely mom. Every Sunday, lavish meals. Definitely breakfast was like cornmeal, oatmeal, lots of these kind of like Haitian grain-based porridges, Haitian hot chocolate, eggs. There's Haitian spaghetti. We have that for breakfast. It's got ketchup and hot dogs. It's really good.
That's interesting. It sounds like, I feel like Filipino has a version, yeah?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was brought over. So dried pasta made its way over to Haiti during the first U.S. occupation of Haiti, which is like in the 30s. And soldiers brought over a lot of processed foods like dried pasta, hot dogs, ketchup, and the Haitians turned it into a breakfast dish of all things.
Talk to me about college. So you were pre-med at NYU, right?
So having parents that always worked in the medical field. So my mom was a microbiology lab supervisor. She also taught microbiology at City College. My dad was a chemistry lab supervisor and he managed a bunch of the labs and hospitals throughout New York. So yeah, I just kind of grew up with like hospital working parents and just always thought I wanted to be a doctor. Got into med school and quickly realized I was in way over my head.
And you weren't into food at this point, were you?
I wasn't at all. Honestly, like my sister has a lot more memories of me cooking as a child than I do. But I remember the first thing we ever baked together was like this terrible like box cake. And it was so bad we had to bury it in the backyard. It's a really funny story. But yeah, honestly, like I didn't, I was just like always surrounded by food and caretakers. We were often watched by aunts and grandmothers because my parents worked 2 jobs. After school, we were watched and there was always food on the table. So I really somewhat pampered. I never had to cook, but I started cooking literally many years later in college as an act of survival because I was just feeding myself on a college kid working at the bookstore kind of income.
And that was at University of Montana, right? So you left NYU, went to University of Montana.
I did. So to go back a little bit, I went to a boarding school in Delaware for high school. And if you ever seen Dead Poet Society, that's my high school. So this was all in line with like my parents just wanting us the best for me and my sister. And it was, do you want to go to private school in the city or do you want to go to boarding school? And we ended up with boarding school. And it was a beautiful experience in the sense that it was just really different growing up in Queens. And it was suburban Queens nonetheless, but still to be at a school with 250 kids, that was my entire high school, to be like on acres and acres and acres of land with cornfields and like this huge pond and like great blue herons flying around. It was just like a very different experience. And that really began my call to nature. And after spending 4 years there, just like loving it, going back home to New York and going to NYU and living with my parents and commuting for 2 hours on the subway and like making new friends after being so close to my friends from high school for 4 years. It was like a kind of an awkward time in my life. Nothing crazy or problematic, but just like really trying to figure out what I was doing. I really don't have a lot of highlights from that first year of college. Although I did meet my best friend, Steve, there. We've been best friends ever since.
How'd you end up at CIA from Montana?
So I go to University of Montana because I think I want to study wildlife biology. And there, two things happen. I start having to cook for myself for the first time because I either lived at home or went to boarding school where they fed us. So I'm cooking for myself for the first time on like a really, really tight budget because my parents are helping me with school, but I have to pay my rent and pay my bills, etc. My roommate was actually a fun cook from Long Island. So we would just like make pasta and like live off potatoes as college students do. And I would host parties or bring lots of dishes to potlucks, with all my friends. And my friend Claire, she literally just went up to this woman, Marianne. She owned this place called the Hobnob Cafe one day. And she was like, he's really good at cooking. He should work here. And that was it. I started washing dishes like pretty soon after that. And that was like my first job working in a restaurant. At the same time, I started making sandwiches and salads at this deli called Freddy's Feed and Read, which is a bookstore and deli. And yeah, that's actually where I first learned how to start cooking. And the woman who was in charge there, her name was Claire. And she taught me how to make like really glossy pasta salads, make sure there's plenty of olive oil so like every noodle is nice and shiny. And whenever I would make vegan sandwiches, make sure that the mayonnaise is, all the way to the edge of the bread and the sauerkraut's perfectly placed on top of the tempeh for the tempeh Reuben. You know what I mean? Like,
did you love that? Did you love the
I loved it. I don't know. I just felt like it was like really, really fun.
Is that where you learned about CIA?
Yeah. So at the restaurant where I was washing dishes, the chef there, Charles, was like, hey, you're kind of into this. Cause he would like let me like make a couple of veggie burgers every now and then between like washing dishes. And I was actually like really bad at washing dishes. I was like so slow. I would get in trouble. Now I clearly understand how efficiency is extremely important. But he'd let me, I'd jump on the line every now and then, as one does when it's slow or busy. He was like, you should go to culinary school. This was like 96. So it was like way before food TV. And I mean, I literally didn't know what culinary school was. I was like, what's culinary school? And then I started diving in, after looking at a few schools in New York. Well, I asked my parents if I could leave college to go to culinary school. And they were like, no. They're like, you need a degree because you just keep running around. I just accumulated, I had the most French credits. So I just ended up getting a French degree just to get out of there and then ended up going to CIA.
Got it. And did you love CIA?
I loved it. It was the best. It was like literally the best. Because I had already been to college. So I was like the older guy on campus. So it's like I just graduated from college and I get to go back to college. It's like, let's party. This is so fun. We were 2 hours from the city. It was great. But also it was just like really the first time like I felt I was actually learning what I was meant to learn. And I was just like so excited, so passionate about everything. I remember just like being so excited about wines class and just like learning all that. And skills class was really fun and interesting. And it just felt like I was finally like where I was supposed to be. And it was really the first time that I actually did well in school because high school was really hard. Pre-med was impossible. University of Montana was fun. I did fine, but to be like an A student at culinary school was really the first time that it all made sense. I spoke at graduation. I was drunk as hell.
You were drunk when you spoke at graduation?
Yes.
I thought you meant like I spoke at graduation, like I was out there.
The speaker.
Oh, man.
Clearly still drunk from the night before. My poor parents. But I loved it. So no regrets, I guess.
Love it. Okay. So, and then you mentioned Jean-Georges, but you were correct me if I'm wrong here, CIA's first student to get an internship with Jean-Georges, which is pretty badass. Like, were you chosen for that? Why do you think or did you apply? How did that work?
Yeah, there's a little family connection within this. So my mom's really good friend's son-in-law was a chef de cuisine, Didier Varro. He was a chef de cuisine. That was my in. So we wrote him. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience because I'm shocked, but they just I'm not sure what their externship program is now, but when I was there, it was more externe des Gardes Manger, and that's their station for the most of the time. I don't know if it's changed, but for me, I was thrown on the line. Like I was like literally like cooking, like on like entremet, like by the time like got done with my extern. So it was really intense. It was like really impactful. It was really cool.
You opened the door like for a lot of people probably.
Oh yeah. But in the past 20 years, quite a few externs have come through. I mean, I would say they got to keep that Garde Manger station staffed. So
did you learn a ton from Jean-Georges in your time there?
Oh yeah. I just remember like even like my first few weeks just being so nervous and just like relearning how to cut a shallot after just graduating from CIA. Like little things like that. How to cook lobster. You know, I did butter poach and how to cook a veal chop and, you know, like all these things. And it was cool. It was a really, really cool time because Greg, my mentor, was coming on board as kind of one of the first people to create recipes for the restaurant besides Jean-Georges. So a lot of the iconic Jean-Georges recipes were created during that era, like the tuna ribbons with the ginger marinade, toast. All those dishes were kind of created during my time there. The sodas that are now bottled and sold at the Tin Building, those were all created during my time there. So there's like a lot of creativity and creation and just watching how they would come up with recipes that have literally been around for 20 years now. Now they're served all around the world. Thinking in the space of how do you create, I remember him saying, this has always stuck with me, is like, how do you make the hits? How do you make something that is recognizable, delicious, perfectly seasoned, accessible, but also interesting? And like that has truly been my goal. I tend to live in the more high volume space of cuisine, even though we do consider kann fine dining. It's very casual, like fine dining. It's loud, it's fun. We do upwards of 200 plus covers a day. So there's some managing there, but I've always wanted to create food that reaches a broad audience. And I learned that there. You know, I think an element that I also have personally added to that is just being like super open to dietary distinctions. And in a world where some world's best restaurants still won't accommodate dietary distinctions, we will pretty much accommodate any dietary distinction we can. Maybe onion garlic. It's really, 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 really hard. Almost everything else, we got you.
You know, it's funny. We talk about Jean-Georges and we've had other guests that have gone through those kitchens. And I've said this before, but like when I'm in a restaurant in any city, you oftentimes can tell if a chef has been through a Jean-Georges kitchen, like from maybe a technique or maybe a flavor or combination or whatever it may be. And you rattled off some of those things. That time must have been instrumental for you, of course, but curious if you incorporate these into like some of your Haitian dishes.
Yeah, for me, you know, that mindset really is just how I cook. Really, I treat each ingredient on a dish as something that needs to be fully seasoned. I don't really rely on things complementing each other to the point that if you don't eat this bite with this, it won't work. So that is one of the ways that we make our food really flavorful, because we are focusing on every ingredient and making sure every component is as delicious and as perfectly seasoned as possible, and offering contrast and complementing as it needs to within the dish. But yeah, seasonality, we had Lux ingredients available year round because we were Jean-Georges, and I love my Lux ingredients. I love my caviar and truffles, of course. Those make appearances on the menu all the time at Cannes for special occasions, etc. But also seasonality. I remember every spring, and you know, we'd get the van and we'd start going to the farmer's market, and that was the bulk of the vegetables. And I remember seeing berries on the stem for the first time and purple scallions for the first time, and just how crazy Jean-Georges would go for the Union Square Market. So for me, seasonality is really big, and I get to live in Oregon, and you know, we have 4 seasons. We have incredible produce, some of the best produce in the country. So we change the menu 4 times a year, like clockwork every year. So that element of seasonality is like really important to me as well. And yeah, I think just being that exploration, you know, that Jean-Georges always had. Back then, we called it fusion, and just incorporating like ginger and lemongrass. And JG started his career in Thailand, so he always had an affinity for these ingredients. But just incorporating those ingredients has always led me down a path of wanting to learn about different cultures' ingredients as well. So I'm grateful that I was kind of given that footbed to just absorb and bounce off on.
So cool. Hey everyone, we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Kikkoman, America's #1 soy sauce. On this season of Beyond the Plate, we've caught up with a group of culinary innovators from around the country referred to as the Kikkoman Kitchen Cabinet to learn how they've been collaborating with the brand to foster culinary innovation and cultural exchange. So far, we've heard from Chef Angel Barreto of Anju in Washington, D.C., and Chef Evelyn Garcia of June Restaurant in Houston, Texas. This week, we're going to Asheville, North Carolina to hear from Chef Mirwan Irani of Chai Pani. Before we begin, our thoughts are with Chef, his team, and everyone impacted by Hurricane Helene. The interview you're about to hear with Chef Mirwan was recorded prior to the hurricane. In partnership with World Central Kitchen, the Chai Pani team made more than 25,000 meals for their neighbors in Asheville and surrounding communities in the wake of Helene. And we're thrilled to hear that their 3 restaurants in Asheville have now reopened. To support the life-saving work of World Central Kitchen, visit wck.org. Enjoy this conversation with Chef Mirwan. Chef, tell us about Chai Pani.
Chai Pani literally means tea and water, but it's the eponymous name of my Indian street food restaurant that we opened 15 years ago. And the emphasis and the focus is on a different kind of Indian food, the street food of India, that I consider to be the most pan-Indian cuisine of India, the most fun, the most delicious, and what I thought would be the most approachable in terms of the broadest audience in America that could enjoy Indian food.
Love it. You use the word mind-blasting to explain your food. How would you say your work with kikkoman fits into this mold?
Well, mind-blasting means many things for us. I mean, the most obvious being to blow people's minds. And we do that through a variety of ways, hospitality, but also with sort of how unexpected some of our dishes are. And using soy sauce, kikkoman soy sauce, for example, in any of our recipes would probably be something that would, I hope, blow someone's mind to see how well what we think of as a Japanese ingredient works so well with an Indian dish or it marries with Indian ingredients. If you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense because I'm always chasing umami. Sort of that flavor profile that makes you just want to smack your lips and lick your fingers. And soy sauce has a lot of notes of umami that blend and match really well with some of our dishes, especially the street food of India.
Love that. Your culinary vision has shaped the way people experience Indian food, really making you a pioneering figure in the modern American dining scene. Would you say ingredients like kikkoman soy sauce play an important role in your cooking?
Absolutely. I'm not pushing the envelope for pushing the envelope's sake. I'm constantly chasing flavor, just like, a guitarist may be constantly chasing tone. And I feel like I have a unique vision of what that flavor profile is. And I'll use ingredients that from all over the spectrum, from Southeast Asian sort of inspiration all the way to even the American South. Kikkoman, as a soy sauce, as I mentioned earlier, adds a very familiar level of umami to dishes. It complements quite a few of the menu items that we have, especially our kebabs. I find it an incredible braising liquid and also find it as an incredible base for certain marinades that we do. Really, it works well with black pepper, works well with curry leaves. And you have to remember, India has been trading with the world for centuries. And just as curry from India got exported even to Japanese cuisine, it makes sense that Chinese or Japanese flavors would also make their way over to India and get incorporated into some aspects of Indian cuisine.
Love that. I think it's fair to say the general public may not think of soy sauce as an ingredient in Indian cooking, as we alluded to. It seems like if there's anyone that's going to push that envelope and get us comfortable with that, it's you. Can you share a technique or dish that truly showcases how you use soy sauce in a non-traditional way at the restaurant?
Absolutely. The lamb boti kebab at Butiwala is probably our number one best-selling item on the menu. And instead of using a traditional yogurt-based marinade and sort of more North Indian style flavors, which is usually what's expected with a kebab from India, I wanted to mix it up and differentiate it from our chicken kebabs. We make a marinade with using a lot of soy sauce as the base, fried onions, fried curry leaves, and a lot of black pepper. And it gives it a sort of a almost Polynesia meets Japan meets India flavor profile that really complements the lamb extremely well. One of the things I like about kikkoman soy sauce in particular as a brand is that they have 2 options, the regular kikkoman and then the one with less sodium. So that allows me as a chef in our menus and our recipes to modulate the amount of salt that we use in a recipe by switching out one versus the other. That's a huge advantage, something most other soy sauce companies don't have, and that's why we end up using kikkoman a lot. You kind of get the salt into the protein, the meat in this case, at a base level, with a lot of that sort of umami also getting drawn into the meat, as versus just using straight salt. So I like any sources of salt that also have flavor associated with it, because as the salt penetrates the meat, that osmosis happens. It's bringing along its flavor buddies into the meat and not just salt.
Love that. Any advice for a home cook listening on how to maybe incorporate it into their cooking in their kitchen?
Making a steak, normally instead of hitting it with a little salt and pepper and letting it rest, try hitting it with a little kikkoman and letting it rest. Making a kebab, hit it with a little kikkoman. Making a dressing that needs just a hint of seasoning to it, instead of just adding table salt, add a little bit of soy sauce. Not only you're adding salt, but you're also adding this depth of flavor, the richness, that meatiness that we get from soy sauce. So that would be my recommendation. Think of salt substitutes and use kikkoman instead.
Love it. This is all amazing. Thank you, Chef. To learn more about Kikkoman, go to kikkomanusa.com/food service and follow them on social media at KikkomanFS. Kikkoman, we thank you. So why Portland from there?
Yeah, Portland, I like to say that I moved to Portland before the New York Times made it cool. But honestly, when I went to college in Montana, we used to drive to Portland to go to raves. So I have a nice history with Portland. Dating back to the early 90s. Fast track, I'm in New York. I had moved to San Diego by then. I was really at the height of my alcoholism. This little 8-month stint I had in San Diego was really bad. I left rehab in New York. I moved to San Diego. It was an utter disaster. And my good friend who had been living in Portland was going to be the executive chef at this hotel that was opening. And he invited me up to apply for the job. And I did work at that hotel, one of the restaurants, for 10 years. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of like this kind of calling, I think, because it really took me moving to Portland to meet someone who was in Alcoholics Anonymous and a chef. And that was maybe the first person who had said that they hadn't drank in years, and it clicked for the first time. So it was really something that needed to happen at that stage in my life. And I'm super grateful. And Oregon has just proven to be a very safe space for me. When we think about places in the country or in the world that we feel safe, because I got sober here, Oregon will always be extremely important to me. I was able to change so much around here.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And then you stayed in that Portland kitchen for 10 years, which is a long time for kitchen years.
Listen up, kids.
Well, if you could do it again, would you have stayed for 10?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other part of that is working somewhere that was high volume, that had corporate accounts, like expensive accounts. It taught me a lot of systems that I'm able to implement at Kann because we are high volume. That restaurant was like 400 covers a day, so sometimes 600 covers. So I'm used to managing large teams, but also because of the way it was set up, they let me do a lot in terms of being able to travel and do events. So I'm extremely comfortable international travel, international events, because I've been able to do it so much for a lot of my career. I'm really good at championing ingredients from somewhere because I've brought Oregon ingredients literally all over the world and cooked with them from Japan to Milan to Paris to London. I've tried to spread the gospel of Oregon. So, honestly, I'm not the youngest person in the room. I waited quite some time to open up my own first restaurant. And a lot of people gave me a lot of flack for working somewhere corporate. You work in a hotel before hotels were completely cool and just another outlet. But at the end of the day, everyone asked me for years and years, when are you going to do your own thing? When are you going to do your own thing? And I was very happy. I was content. And then I realized one day that I wasn't. And I was like, okay, it's time. I wasn't dramatic. It was just I feel like it's ready and it's time. And yeah, I feel all that knowledge, waiting and absorbing and traveling and learning from others. I think that has helped me open Kann to the success that it has.
Hell yeah. Tell us about Kann, man. Is this the dream restaurant?
Yes. As much as any restaurant can be a dream and a nightmare at the same time.
That's funny. For people who aren't familiar, I would love for you to just share.
We opened Kann in 2022. We turned 2 over the summer, and we are a 70-seat wood-fired Haitian restaurant. We showcase a lot of traditional flavors and dishes of the Haitian cuisine, but we also honor West Africa, where we were taken from when France colonized Haiti. We also honor our place in the Caribbean and our place in the American South, as a lot of Haitians migrated to Louisiana when France gave it up. It's a very busy restaurant. Mad respect to any independent restaurant groups that have multiple stores, because it is really hard. I have one and a bar, and it's really hard. But at the end of the day, yeah, it feels really good to, have a place that is ours. I just woke up today. I was just I can't wait to go to work today. So excited to see the team and work with everybody and make the food and make the guests happy. That really is the best part. And to see the team grow and our managers grow and have our cooks work different stations, the way things work, I think it's very interesting because a lot of people have left the industry. At the end of the day, there are tons of jobs that pay more. The restaurant margins are really tight, and you could probably do some of this work from home for less hours. So it really takes a dedicated person who really does love the food and beverage industry, who really does enjoy working because the hours are long. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. You gotta have a little bit of a wacky sense of work-life balance. Not everyone's sense of work-life balance is the same. For some people, working 6 days a week is enough. of a work-life balance. So you can't say that like there's one work-life balance, but at the same time, it feels good to have a place that is ours and we create beautiful experiences for everyone. And there's quite a bit of room for opportunity. And that feels good because sometimes it might take a little bit longer. Like I stayed many years at my places. I worked at Jean Georges for 5 years before I became a sous chef. To see that type of dedication these days, I'm just being very honest, like it's very rare.
Back to what you said, listen up, kids.
Yeah. I think it's very rare that someone's going to, work hard 5 years to be a sous chef. But sometimes it's what it takes.
You mentioned your cocktail bar, which is downstairs, Sous Sol. You want to give us a little preview of that? That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so we opened Sous Sol a few months after opening Kann, and it's our subterranean cocktail bar. Underneath Kann, we have a space, and while Kann is light and lots of wood and natural stones, vibrant Haitian food, downstairs is very much cocktail focused. It's very dark. There's this really cool forest motif wallpaper, these fuchsia banquettes, gold sconces. So it's a great vibe. The food is incredible. I really love the food there. The team has always done a good job. There we have some fun because we're able to just be inspired by the broader Caribbean. And that does pair with a very extensive rum list, really fun cocktails, and a robust zero-proof cocktail program as well. So that's the place where you go for bites, really great cocktails. If you're really hungry, you can just order the menu and make a meal out of it. But it's just like a fun place to go. And I'll be honest, it's way easier than getting into Kann. Kann's like crowded sometimes, but
separate kitchen? Or?
Yeah, separate kitchen. Sous Sol's open on Fridays and Saturdays, and the space is open for private events the rest of the week. So we've been able to do some fun things down there. We just hosted Masa and the Katana Kitten team. We did 2 pop-ups. That was really incredible. That was quite the party. We made a bunch of Japanese-inspired food. So that was really fun. So we're able to do stuff like that now.
Love that. Masa's awesome. Was that important for you, like as a non-drinker, to have like a...
Yeah, so all my spaces have a very strong zero-proof beverage program. Obviously, zero-proof programs are quite popular these days, but I do feel there's still some work to do in terms of everyone offering options, and some people will just take it more seriously than others, and we definitely do. In Kann, we have the same amount of cocktails as we have zero-proof cocktails. Sous Sol, we have a smaller number, but they're seasonal, they're just as complex. And we're also expanding our zero-proof wine program because that has become quite the thing as well. And there are some really great zero-proof wines coming in from around the world. I think just like creating as inclusive a space as possible is really important. And I am a member of the recovery community, but these days these kids that I'm saying that don't want to stick around, but they're drinking less alcohol. And a lot of folks are just drinking less alcohol. And you don't have to be part of the recovery community to like not want to drink. And that's very responsible of you. And I commend those people who can do that. So I want to offer them a great place to come. And you should be able to not be like, hey, can you make me a mocktail or can I have a mojito? Like you're able to come to our spaces and just look at the menu and order something as beautiful and as creative and as visually striking and delicious as the alcoholic version of the drink.
Okay, so in spring of 2025, you'll be the culinary director of Printemps in New York, which is 5 concepts from cafe to fine dining, all within the One Wall Street building. This is a special project. Can you tell us what you can about it?
I'm very excited. We've been working on this for a year. The team has been working on it for about 3 years, if not 4 years, and construction has been even longer. But yeah, super excited to come back to New York. I haven't cooked in New York professionally outside of a pop-up or dinner in years. So it's very, very exciting to come home. We're excited to announce the concept a little bit later. But, to be able to come home and do something in the fine dining space, it's really, really exciting for me to kind of be able to tap into our other concepts. We have our cafe, we have a oyster bar. So all these kind of like little pockets of culinary expression is really exciting for me. And we have a great team. And it's going to be really, really, really cool.
I want to learn more about this award-winning cookbook, Everyone's Table. It sounds so fascinating just about as it relates to the body and all, like why this thing, it sounds like a personal book.
Yeah, I mean, that book is interesting. It's like the first cookbook. So you throw it all on the table or leave it all on the floor, leave it all on the stage I don't know, whatever you want to say, leave it all on the cutting board. But, when I was working on that book, it really was about my health journey and getting sober and eliminating certain things from my diet through going paleo and just like eliminating gluten and dairy and any processed sugars. Well, I definitely incorporate other things into my diet. Like I can have some soy, I can eat grains, no problem. But just going full in and creating a book which has over 200 recipes that are ready to go for anyone with like any type of these dietary distinctions. And tons of people don't eat dairy these days. That's pretty common. Tons of people, millions, are gluten-free or gluten-free curious. That's really common because they're just thinking that it makes them feel better. But there's a good majority of people who can't have soy or can't have grains for digestive issues, etc. So it was fun creating recipes because I think about recipes like that quite easily. So, and that book really represented a lot of the global flavors that I love. I worked in the Pan-Asian space for quite some time, so there's quite a few Asian-focused recipes in that cookbook. I introduced some Haitian recipes just based on my travels around the world and some of the foods that I've eaten, and like making things that you can, if you're an adventurous foodie and like to cook, you can make that at home with like really clear instructions on all the ingredients, where to source them, going to your Caribbean market or going to your Asian market and sourcing these ingredients and how to stock them and breaking up certain dishes into steps. But really, it's a very big book. It's like 400 pages. It was my pandemic project. So
you wanted to like go through it again?
Yeah, I had tons of time. So it's cool because it was a really fun project and people are really responsive to the book. People are still tagging me in posts saying that they've made tons of recipes from the book. Now I'm writing my second cookbook and I am not in a pandemic and I am in the middle of opening a 5-concept complex. And so it's not quite the same experience writing my second cookbook.
You're like, wait a second, this is a little different. Before I was inside and had this.
It's a lot harder. So for my second cookbook focuses on weekday recipes. The book will be a little bit smaller, but I wanted to create something that was like a little more broadly accessible. So if you're not like a foodie home cook that likes to make pickles and then make a brine and make a marinade and do all that, you can really use this book to get dinner on the table within an hour or so.
Love that. All right, Chef. So I mentioned this a little bit before we started, but the podcast celebrates social impact and giving back with all of our guests, and learning how you all do it keeps us motivated and going. We love shining a light on all of the great work and causes and organizations you all are affiliated with. I would love to have you share some more about the work you have done or do in the community, because I know you're an incredibly giving person.
Sure. Community is really important to me. And I think as I keep going, finding the time becomes one of the hardest things. These are the things that I'm very much aligned on. And I would say number one is Ben's Friends. Ben's Friends of Hope is the website, but it's a recovery group and platform for people specifically in the restaurant industry. It is not a structured program like, say, Alcoholics Anonymous, etc. But as we talk about recovery and sobriety in different spaces and different ways to get there, and recovery changing for a lot of different folks, it's really cool to have a space where we can talk about restaurant-specific topics. So like if you're a bartender and you think you have an addiction issue with drugs or alcohol, this is a great space because no one's going to judge you for not wanting to not work at a bar. We've had winemakers join the team or join the group and get sober. So it's a really cool space. It's just a meeting format, open discussion. There really isn't homework. So I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous because that program really worked for me. Some people don't feel like it works for them, and tons of people have gotten sober in Ben's Friends. And I think that's extremely impressive. We have virtual meetings every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 a.m. Eastern. And there are in-person meetings every day at 10 a.m. in multiple cities all across the country. So that ping back into the Lano Club of Portland, which is one of the West Coast's biggest recovery groups as well. I'm a board member there. And that is really where I went to my first AA meeting where it clicked. So huge props to them, but always fundraising for a lot of programs that kind of focus on life outside of recovery. So it's not just about getting sober, but it's about getting sober and going to the gym and going mountain climbing and going rock climbing and doing cooking classes. So they have tons and tons of services for the sober folks and the people in recovery that want to get back out there and do fun things with sober people and just be out there. Urban Gleaners is something that I am also on the board of, and Urban Gleaners is a wonderful organization in Portland, Oregon that rescues food from, say, restaurants and events and convention centers and redistributes it to communities in need. So they're always looking for donations and people just to repack the food to redistribute it. So those are three right there. And I would say coffee. So my coffee company, Kann Coffee, directly supports about 2,000 farmers. So kanncoffee.com. It's extremely rare. There's only one importer of Haitian coffee in the United States. So I'm not sure if a lot of folks have had Haitian coffee. It's really delicious. It's one of Haiti's biggest crops at its heyday during colonial times, but it's really great coffee. And our purchases of the coffee itself help support many, 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 many Haitian people making, growing, harvesting, shipping that coffee to the States. So that's a great way to support a direct Haitian ingredient.
Love it. 3 great causes, organizations. I remember Tyler Malik was on the podcast. He had mentioned Urban Gleaners as well.
Yeah, Tyler's OG Urban Gleaners. Yeah.
Cool. I want to do a quick speed round and then we'll close it out. Number 1 is, what did you have for dinner last night?
Zanku chicken. I was in LA.
Nice. Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
Vanilla.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Butter.
Oh, interesting. What pisses you off in the kitchen?
Dirty side towels.
What makes you happy in the kitchen?
Seeing the team work in unison.
What actor is playing Gregory Gourdet in a movie?
Wow, that's a great question. Coleman Domingo, come on.
What's the North Star for Chef Gregory Gourdet? What do you want to do that you haven't done?
It'd be nice to potentially go for a Michelin star at some point in my career. We don't have that in Oregon yet. So I think that's when we talk about working towards getting an accolade. I would love to travel more. I'd love to go to West Africa and just really explore. I've been to North Africa, but I haven't been able to get to West Africa yet. I would love to write a Haiti cookbook. That's something that I've been thinking about. I really want to write my second cookbook before diving in, but I'd love to write a regional exploration of traditional Haitian food because I'm not sure that book has been done in a big way yet. So.
Ooh, a lot of good things for us to look forward to in your world.
Always hustling, Kathy.
Well, I appreciate your time, dude. Thank you so much. I know you're busy on the road. Hopefully you get some moments at home with the team, with the crew, with friends and family. And I'm looking forward to even a bigger and better excuse to get out to Portland. So
come see me.
I'll see you.
Bye.
Thanks again to Chef Gregory Gourdet. Find him on Instagram at GG30000 or at gregorygourdet.com. To learn more about Ben's Friends, go to bensfriendshope.com. To learn more about Urban Gleaners, go to urbangleaners.org. And to learn more about Kann Coffee, go to kanncoffee.com. We'll share links in the episode notes and at beyondtheplatepodcast.com. This episode was produced by myself, along with Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, and Sean Petrosian. Our digital media producer is Sarah McClellan-Mee. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Find him at iGoldford. As always, special shout out to my wife, Katie. If you have not started following me yet, you should. Find me across all social media at On Cappy's Plate or go to beyondtheplatepodcast.com and keep up to date with Beyond the Plate. Beyond the Plate is also on social at BT Plate Podcast. If you have a moment, we'd be grateful of your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday for an episode of Beyond the Drink, our companion podcast of Beyond the Plate, brought to you by our friends at Ford's Gin. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.